I mean, I remember when we showed Seth Rogen Donnie Darko for the first time. I believe this was Seth's first movie. If you remember, he plays one of the bullies.
Yeah.
I remember the lights went up or the credits were rolling, and I remember him walking out of the theater and was like, "It's the most complicated movie ever," you know. I think that's what he said.
Welcome to Sincast, presented by Cinemasins.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Sincast. This is Chris Atkinson from Cinemasins, joined as always by the voice of Cinemasins, Jeremy Scott.
Hello.
And from Music Video Sins, Barrett Share.
Hi.
And today we have a very special guest. It is writer-director Richard Kelly. Yeah. Who is where there's a special edition Blu-ray release of Southland Tales coming out on January 26th. It's got the theatrical version and the can cut containing 15 minutes of restored footage. Richard Kelly, welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for talking with us, and we definitely want to get into Southland Tales and everything. But briefly, let's talk a little bit of Donnie Darko. I think that's still what a lot of people know you from and everything. And you made this movie when you were like 24, 25?
I was 23 years old when I wrote the script. I think I sold it to get it financed when I was 24. And then right as we went into production, I think I was probably just turning 25 when we went into production, summer of 2000.
Wow.
Yeah. The year 2000.
Yeah. Was your head spinning during this whole time? I know that 25 years old, I don't know what I would have done with commanding this big of a cast on my first movie.
You know, it was a combination of being really prepared because I had been to film school. For whatever that's worth to some people, it was worth a lot to me. I went to USC and I had a degree, and I felt that I was ready to do the job, to direct a feature film. You know, I'd done some shorts and I had done all my research and I had a great crew and I had all these amazing people around me. So I felt really prepared for a 25-year-old, but you're still terrified. And if you're not terrified, then I think there's something wrong. You know, you should be really, really intimidated by the opportunity of directing a feature film, no matter what age you are, because it's, in my opinion, it's the best job in the world. It's the most exciting opportunity for an artist. If you want to go down that path and you can achieve it, I recommend it for everyone. But you should also be scared. You should be really terrified. So there was plenty of fear, and I just showed up every day as prepared as I could be, and you have to take it one day at a time. Directing a movie is literally a one day at a time endeavor because you've got 12 hours. You know, you can't go into overtime. If you do, you're getting into trouble, you know, so you've got to just plan out your day and make your day. So it was a huge opportunity, and I tried to meet up to the challenge as best I could.
Just having recently watched it again, I was just particularly affected by that ending again. The ending of that movie, you know, I don't know if I had nearly cried before watching it. I did this time for some reason. And I think it's just because, you know, you recognize the sacrifice that Donnie's making at the end of that movie. And then the images of Maggie Gyllenhaal and Holmes Osborne especially tears me apart when I see it. And then Mary McDonnell trying to put on a brave face and everything, and then just sort of the simple waving that goes on before the credits roll. How did you corral that cast for that movie?
Well, that was that was part of what was so terrifying about directing your first movie at age 25 is when you're surrounded by that many actors, many of whom, I've watched growing up. Just pretty much every actor in that cast I was very familiar with and had this incredible respect and admiration for all of them. And so it was just trying to surrender myself to the raw emotion of the material and listen to them when they had a suggestion and kind of form a collaborative relationship with all of them. And I've done that with every actor I've worked with. I try to look at it as kind of a teacher-student relationship, but it's really not clear who's the teacher and who's the student. You kind of, both wear the hat, and depending on the conversation that you're having. And there would be so many times when the actors would teach me something, or I would give them like a little project to go home with and come back with, a backstory or an idea for a scene. And so it's just this sort of collaboration, and it's ongoing. It really is a really intimate relationship that I think the director should have with the actors, in a way where there's a really clear line of communication. And if they're uncomfortable with a line of dialogue or the staging of something, they should be able to speak up. And so I try to just have a really open line of communication with all of them. And I think by the end of the first week, I had the crew believing in me, because you got 1 week to either win or lose the crew. And then with the actors, it usually takes a little longer. And if you've got an ensemble coming in and out, as we did on this, you've got, different actors coming in and sort of diving into the madness. And, but by the end, I felt like I had gained everyone's trust and everyone felt like I had done a good job. And it's not always that they understand the whole big picture when I'm doing these movies, because all of my movies are these really ambitious metaphysical puzzles, and they've got big science fiction ideas and big complicated plots that are often difficult to decipher. And as you discussed with the ending of this film, in all my films, there's a tragic ending where the protagonist usually does not survive. So it's not an easy sort of puzzle to decipher. But if the actors have an emotional understanding of their own character, that's really all that matters, because it's not their job to understand everything that's going on in my head. And I wouldn't want them to, because they'd probably run screaming and never speak to me again. As long as they understand their emotional arc, then I think I've done my job. And if they show up at the premiere and they see it all put together and they're like, "Oh, okay, I kind of get what you were trying to do," I remember when we showed Seth Rogen Donnie Darko for the first time. It was at a screening. I think it was just before Sundance. We kind of did a cast and crew screening and everything, and I believe this was Seth's first movie. If you remember, he plays one of the bullies. Yeah, Ricky Danforth, who's one of the cruel bullies in the school. I remember the lights went up or the credits were rolling, and I remember him walking out of the theater and was like, "It's the most complicated movie ever," I think that's what he said.
Yeah.
Felt the same way at that point.
Yeah.
How close, since it's such a collaborative relationship, how close do you get with your actors? Obviously, you've worked with just the ridiculous talent in both of those first two features. If you see a Gyllenhaal walking down the street or something, like, you guys dap up or like give the elbow thing, or like you guys still kind of recognize each other and stay in touch or anything like that?
Yeah, I've kept in touch with a lot of the actors from the movies. I wish I could be in constant communication with all of them, because it feels like they're part of, when you're a director and you make movies like I do, it's a really personal kind of filmmaking. So you feel like, again, it's sort of like a student and a teacher relationship. And I want to clarify, very often I'm the student, so, but it's like the way that you remember your favorite teachers from high school, or your favorite classmates, if Hollywood is high school, then you never forget those people. And, maybe life is like high school. Maybe it's like No Exit. Star Trek stuff is high school, we're still stuck there. We're all learning and we're all, suffering, but, I don't know. It's a really personal experience you have. And sometimes you only spend a few days with someone, or it's like a few months, if they're the lead actor. But I don't know. Those are times that are etched into my memory, and they're in my CPU database in my brain forever. I remember virtually every shooting day from every movie. I remember like the chronology. I remember the beginning, middle, and end of each day. I remember every little thing that happened. And it's like, when you're shooting a movie, like those days, like they burn so much brighter than normal days when you're just sitting on the couch and looking at Twitter all day or something. I mean, there's entire months of my life that I've just deleted from my brain. They're just gone. They're meaningless. But again, every day on set is like a really special day, and there's like all this extra adrenaline flowing through your body, and it's a really, for me, being on a movie set is like this sacred time. So the time spent with the actors is sacred. So any chance I get to ever reunite with them or speak to them is always going to be a blessing to me.
Awesome. I wanted to ask you real quick. I'm a big proponent of people who are willing to kill their main characters. But I'm curious, since you mentioned that it is sort of a theme with your films to have a tragic ending, usually involving the protagonist. I'm curious what your reasoning is as a storyteller, why that is a consistent thing that you come back to.
Well, I don't necessarily recommend it to other storytellers, because when you do that, when you kill off your beloved protagonist, and if they are beloved, that means you've done your job well. But then the test audience gets really angry with you. They become really angry if you get them to fall in love with this character, and then the character dies at the end. Now, if the death is earned and it's a sacrificial death, then it makes sense for the story, and the story earns it. And I hope I've done that on my first 3 films, but it doesn't mean that the audience is necessarily going to be happy. So you take that risk where if the ending of your movie is a downer, and it's also a confusing downer, it's like the audience isn't quite sure why the lead character had to die, or whether it was necessary, or whether it's some kind of sadistic cruelty on behalf of the filmmaker for inflicting that fate upon the lead character. You're taking a risk that I don't necessarily recommend to everyone, and it's not something that all the films that I hope to make and I've been working on, and all the stories that I've been working on making in the future, and all the writing I've been doing, I'm not necessarily someone who's obsessed with this sort of martyred death of the protagonist. It's not like something that's going to happen every time. But for these stories, it just felt like that was like there was a theme of sacrifice, and there was an ambiguity to the death of the protagonist, and kind of like this sort of the symmetry with the protagonist being killed with a metal object, a large metal object, a bullet of some kind that takes a different form. And it's not necessarily a bullet. It can be a jet engine or a rocket launcher, or in the case of the box, it's actually a bullet. But it was a sort of a theme that I was working through on the first 3 films. And but again, boy, to the test audiences, they don't like those. They don't like those. Doesn't make it easy.
I have been baffled by the jet engine for 20 years, man. The the explanation I've come up with in my head is weird space continuum shit. Is that sort of what is that? I'm trying to figure out if I'm anywhere near right on this.
Well, I think you just described like the Big Bang and the formation of the universe, didn't you?
There you go.
We can chalk up our entire existence on this planet as to weird space-time continuum shit, right? Maybe. No, it's a really worthy question, because the jet engine, and the circumstances of Donnie's death at the end of the film are obviously, they bear scrutiny and analysis, and not all of the answers are presented in the text of the film. And there is a logic and a science fiction apparatus that I do believe that, and that I understand, and that I think I could probably elaborate much further. And there's a lot more discussion and narrative exploration there, but without kind of like getting into too much about it, there's definitely a lot more there, and there's a reason, and there's a design behind all of it. But there just wasn't really room in the 2 hours and change text of Donnie Darko to really get into all of that.
Right.
There's the tangent universe, or there's the 28-day time frame that occurs the first 90% of the film, which is one could argue might be a dream, or some kind of communal dream that's experienced by a lot of people. But, there's that tangent universe world that sort of exists and the events of it. But then there's everything that you don't see, the analysis of the events after the credits roll, so there's a lot more there. And it's just like, sometimes there's just not enough real estate in a feature film to explore all the ideas, and you just try to get everything. You try to get enough there to leave the audience satisfied, but perhaps wanting more and wanting to continue to process things. Yeah,
you came out with, I believe the director's cut came out 10, 11 years ago, somewhere around there. Is that the movie you would make today, or do you think you would do more to it if you were to make that Donnie Darko today?
Well, the director's cut, I intentionally kind of probably overstuffed it with more information that was part of the philosophy of time travel. The book that you see in the film, written by Roberta Sparrow. I had completed some partial elements of what's inside of that book, and I had sort of completed and written those elements while we were in post-production editing the film. And I knew there wasn't going to be room for it in the text of the theatrical cut of the movie, because it was going to be too long, and it was a lot of kind of encyclopedia kind of text information. So that stuff ended up on the website for the film. And when they came to me for a director's cut, I figured I would try to do like an extended version of the film. That it was never meant to replace the theatrical cut. It was just meant to be sort of an extended sort of alternate version for people who really wanted to dig into this sort of science fiction mythology of what's in the time travel book. And it was meant to sort of set up the much bigger universe, of Donnie Darko, and potentially, a lot more narrative that could be explored in greater detail. And so I'm really not satisfied with either version of the film. If I were able to kind of create a third version of it, it would probably be a split somewhere between the two existing versions, and there would be more visual effects work that I would want to do, particularly towards the end of the movie, that I could never afford to do, that we never had the budget to do. But, again, these things are never really finished. They're sort of abandoned. And so, I think that there's just a lot of ideas there, and it was always meant to be a science fiction film, and every little thing that you see in every scene is there for a reason. There's some stuff in the movie that some people have never even picked up on and what it means, or they've never really figured out what it could mean. So it's been exciting for me to just sort of process it and analyze it and think about it, over the past 2 decades. And, it makes more sense to me now probably than it ever has, which is good because, maybe that's like a step forward in terms of growth, personal growth or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, you want to, it'd be nice to have all the resources the first time out, and that's not to say I wasn't enormously blessed with a lot of resources, 20 years ago when we directed this movie. It was the summer of 2000 and we were able to raise $4.5 million to make the movie.
Wow.
That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for anyone, but for someone at that age, for your first film, it was a large amount of money. But at the same time, some of the stuff we were trying to achieve, visual effects and even practical effects wise, it's just we couldn't get completely to the finish line. It wasn't quite enough. But I'm proud of what we were able to do with that amount. I guess if you adjust for inflation, $4.5 million in the year 2000, what's that, about 6 and change or something now? So movies cost money. That's the thing. It's like they really, even if you shoot a movie on an iPhone and you're not lighting anything, you're doing it really, and people do that now. They do more than you think. It still costs money. And it should cost money, I think, to look like a film and not just, like something that's thrown together. I think there's a real need for a proper schedule and a proper art department and a lighting package and all of those things. And,
I think a common misconception for film fans is, they don't think about how much work a director has to do. You mentioned earlier, you have like a week for the crew to come on board with you or not. And, I think a lot of people just think of the director as, the guy telling people where to stand and where the camera goes, but there's like a whole circus going on, and like the buck stops with you, right? And I've always been in awe of anybody that can do that job. And sometimes people joke about whether I would ever want to make a movie, and I'm like, no, I would be terrible at that. I don't think I could do that. It's way more complicated and way more about relationships than I think people realize.
Yeah, and you have to surround yourself with a really, really tight group of people that you trust. You need to have time to develop a relationship with them. You got to communicate to them exactly what you want, and you have to really direct your crew just the way you direct your actors. And you sort of, you give your actors an emotional roadmap for how to navigate their character. You have to do the same thing with your cinematographer, your costume designer, your production designer. Everyone who's in your department, they have to know exactly what you want. They should know exactly what you want, provided that you actually do know what you want. And it's just really making sure that they have a really clear roadmap. And if all that work is accomplished in in pre-production, then you are able to spend the time with the actors, and you're not running around on set freaking out because you don't know what you want and where you want to put the camera, or you haven't decided what color you want that wall to be, or this actress's scarf, you got to pick something, it should all be figured out ahead of time so that, when the actors are in their makeup and ready to go, that you're giving them all of your attention, and the crew has it all mapped out and it's all ready. So it's just a lot of communication. It's a lot of decision making. I mean, you have to make 1,000 decisions every single day, and that's in addition to the 1,000 decisions you've already had to make in pre-production. So it's a lot. It's a lot to digest, and it's not for everybody. But to me, it's the best job in the world. So
awesome.
Is there a 20th anniversary Donnie Darko anything in the works?
Well, there's a lot of work we've been doing on Donnie Darko in a lot of ways. So I don't know exactly what is in store for the 20th anniversary. I think we're just trying to get through tomorrow afternoon. Let's see. What happens?
Aren't we all, Richard?
What happens tomorrow afternoon? It's now 1:33 p.m. Eastern Standard.
No idea.
January 19th, 2021.
Thank you for marking the date, by the way.
Yes.
If this podcast doesn't survive through noon tomorrow, can it be put in a cloud somewhere for aliens to download?
Yes,
absolutely.
That's the first thing I'm going to do.
That's the first thing. We put it in the alien cloud, and then, just for safekeeping. Southland Tales came out in 2006. So you have a Blu-ray that now has the can cut of Southland Tales, which is a 2 hour and 40 minutes. What's sort of the difference between the can cut and the theatrical cut?
Well, I want to give the caveat to the audience that the can cut of Southland Tales is a work in progress, unfinished version of the film. It is basically if you got in a time machine and flew back to 2006 and went to the French Riviera and went to the Cannes Festival and snuck into the theater, this is what you would have seen in 2006. And
interesting.
So we've done a 4K polish of what existed, but what you're seeing in the Cannes version is it has a lot of unfinished visual effects in it. The edit is a little rough in places, in my opinion, and it was a version of the film that it has a lot of extended scenes and a lot of deleted scenes that you might not have ever seen before, and it's a more kind of more complete version of the film, but it is not finished in any way, shape, or form. So I just want to put that sort of caveat out there. But I'm very excited for people to see it because it just gives you a new approach on the film in terms of the bigger picture, and look at it alongside the theatrical cut. Again, neither version in my mind is finished. We have some more visual effects work that we put together for the theatrical cut, and there's some more kind of news media elements and some more graphics and some more stuff that expands into the graphic novel prequels and stuff and gives a little more of a impression of what the bigger story is. But it's two versions of the film that are still work in progress in my mind, and I hate continuing to talk about my films as work in progress because it's frustrating because it's usually just because of restrictions on either running time or budget, or visual effects budget, or the sort of distribution apparatus just isn't prepared or ready to kind of support this kind of thing. So the Cannes version is very much, I'm excited for people to see it, but just to know, don't expect polished visual effects or, there's still a lot of work in my mind that we hope to do with Southland Tales. So it's for me kind of like presenting a historical curiosity in what the Cannes cut is. But then also hopefully this entire Blu-ray release can be kind of like a catalyst for something really exciting to happen down the road.
Awesome.
Yeah. Is it? Do you see this movie being like a 4 hour type of thing at some point, like that you wanted to add more to it?
Yeah, well, we published 3 graphic novels. So when you watch the existing version of Southland Tales, the 2 versions, you'll see it begins with chapter 4 and is divided into chapter 4, 5, and 6. So we published graphic novels for the first 3 chapters. So the big total story of Southland Tales is 6 chapters. And kind of in my mind, if we were able to really do the big grandiose version of it that I would hope to be able to do, it would be all 6 chapters. And I think I would divide it into 2 films, probably. It would probably be like 2-3 hour films. You know, they could exist side by side on like a streaming platform where that kind of narrative is easier to digest for people. You know, so it would be like a new prequel film that would then continue into an expanded version of the existing film with a lot of new footage added to the existing film. So I'm kind of looking at it as dividing it into two films, two kind of epic length films. But again, within each film is a division of 3 chapters, and it's 6 chapters total. So, you know, it's kind of like a 6-chapter miniseries, except it would probably be presented as 2 feature films. But maybe if people want the option of skipping forward to each chapter, they can do that. You know, it's just a question of, you know, how you can platform cinema today. There's just a whole new, there's a whole new world kind of opening up, I think. And we're seeing kind of a gray area between what is a film and what is a television series. And I see that sort of line in the sand kind of moving a bit as we sort of get deeper into the streaming platform as being the primary delivery mechanism for, I hate to use the word content because it makes me sound like a corporate, you know, something, but these narratives, these long form narratives are going to be delivered primarily through these streaming services. And, you know, I don't know how movie theaters are going to continue to exist, you know, over the next decade. I'm sure they're going to continue to exist in some form, but I don't know if they're ever going to be what they were before the pandemic. I hope they recover, and I'm rooting for movie theaters. But at the same time, you know, if an artist wants to create like a 3 or a 4 hour movie, or a movie that's a story that's even longer, but that needs to be chapterized in some kind of way, but they still want it to be a movie. They want it to be a piece of cinema and not necessarily a television series. I don't know. Maybe we're going to see more of a blurring of that line, or a moving of that line.
Yeah.
I want to know real quick how many copies of this special edition Blu-ray coming out I have to buy to make the first 3 chapters thing happen.
Well, the exact number.
I think that us being able to talk about it, and I've been able to do a lot of press, and I've actually been working on it. You know, I've been working on tons of new projects, and, you know, if I could figure out how to make a little, you know, Donnie Darko, even cheaper than Donnie Darko budget movie, I would have directed a ton of them over the past 10 years, but all my stuff is really big and ambitious. And so I've been in the workshop working on so many things, but during the pandemic, I've really been working on Southland Tales, and the new script, which is the first 3 chapters, the first film, and the new material that would be integrated into the existing film. I'm very excited. I'm very encouraged by it, because I think I've made something that's worthy of the whole endeavor, that it's actually, I think I've taken what I did with the graphic novels and I've really advanced them forward significantly into a much more cinematic and a much more cohesive, and maybe a surprising new approach to how to expand the story. And it's I feel really excited by it, and I think the strategy involves animation and live action, and a mix of both, maybe in a way that hasn't quite been done exactly before, but I think it could really work, and I think it could open the whole project up to a new audience, to people who've never seen it before. And if they get to start at chapter 1, they'll experience the whole thing in a way that they can understand. But also for the people who've seen it 10 times or 20 times, they can experience the whole thing. And then when they get to chapter 4 that they're already familiar with, the new material that I would incorporate into chapters 4, 5, and 6 would really surprise people and really like add a whole new dimension to the whole narrative that I think it was would be very exciting for me, at least. So I
Mhm.
think it would translate to an audience, and that's kind of what I've been working on to make sure that it all works, that it all fits together.
Awesome.
You
Yeah.
aren't kidding about the ambitiousness of Southland Tales. This is your second movie, and if you thought that you had a big cast to work with in the first movie, you've doubled or tripled it in this one, and you have made a story that I get the sense that you were in an office and you had a bunch of those like index cards and pictures of people and like strings attaching to everything to keep up with it. How in the world do you keep up with a plot this complex when you're writing and directing a movie like Southland Tales?
Well, having index cards and strings, you're giving me way too much credit. I'm nowhere near that organized.
It's a whole different level.
Yeah, it's all swirling. Back then, it was all swirling around in my head,
Mhm.
But the organizational stuff was me writing the graphic novel prequels,
Mhm.
because those came out of giving all the characters a backstory and figuring out like their motivations. You have the neo-Marxists, and you have U.S. Ident, and you've got Boxer and Nana Mae Frost and Bobby Frost and his wife Madeline, and you've got all these different power structures and people who are trying to screw each other over and to gain power, I guess. And you've got Baron von Westphalen, the alternative energy pioneer, who's at the top of the food chain, who's trying to sow chaos and everything. So it was me kind of managing all of the narrative complexity, and by writing the graphic novels and getting those scripts sort of ready, that I could see the big picture, the big 6-chapter picture. And that at the time was very, very probably foolish to some degree and naive on my part to think that I could ever get an audience to really embrace a story that began at chapter 4.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
not necessarily a wise endeavor to bite off more than you can chew in such a way. But for me, it was just, I was so excited by the opportunity to have a grandiose story that sort of was bursting at the seams. And I was thinking, oh, it'll be a transmedia project, right? And I was really naive thinking that people would actually buy the graphic novels and read them. And, we barely even got them published. And it was Kevin Smith and his partner, Bob Chapman, who helped us publish them and get them printed. And it was just a real shoestring grassroots publication kind of endeavor. And I think I just kind of got this rude awakening, when we went to Cannes, and, again, I went with an unfinished version of the film, which we just had no time and no money, and we didn't have domestic distribution, and no one was going to throw a whole bunch of visual effects money at us by any means. And so I was just, I had sort of just bitten off more than I could chew, and
Mhm.
it was just too much for 2006. It just
Mhm.
wasn't going to ever happen back then. But I got the books finished, and we got a slightly more polished edit of the movie, in the theatrical cut. I had to trim a lot of stuff that I wanted to leave in, but I got a little bit more visual effects money. We had to bring in some college interns from Chapman University to help.
Nice.
These lovely 21-year-old kids, Shane Powell and Chris Byall were their names. They're now, I think, working in the visual effects industry, and they're well paid by now. But so it was a real uphill battle in a lot of ways. After we went to Cannes, but we got it as far as we could, and we got the books published, and here we are, 15 some odd years later, and guess who's leaving the Oval Office tomorrow?
One of the things that's fun about watching this is seeing someone like Dwayne Johnson, who at the time was being groomed as the new Schwarzenegger. I believe he had been in like 3 or 4 action films. They were trying to sort of pass the mantle off to him and everything. And he had been in the sequel to Get Shorty called Be Cool, but I feel like this is maybe his first like real, let's do something different kind of project that he does in his acting career. It's really interesting watching him in this, especially now seeing what his career became. The same goes for Justin Timberlake, who had not really done any acting up until this point, but 2006 was his year, man. He did Alpha Dog, he did Black Snake Moan, he did this movie. What did you see in these two guys back then that said they need to be in your movie?
Well, I think with Dwayne and with Justin, and this extends to virtually every cast member in the movie, they're both just bursting with charisma, and they have a natural, intuitive performance history. And going back to with Justin, since he was, in the Mickey Mouse Club and just been on stage his whole career, and with Dwayne going all the way back to being in the pro wrestling ring and performing, and that's wonderful training ground for any performer. And I look at anyone with a long performance history like that as having enormous potential as an actor. And, these guys can think on their feet. You can give them really complex direction, ask them to step into a really complicated situation, and they'll figure it out. They'll in 30 seconds, they'll figure out how to do something and to give you something great. Like, they can think on their feet better than anyone. And not a lot of actors can do that. There's a lot of dramatic actors or, actors that have been on the stage for years, and, classically trained actors, they need a lot of rehearsal. They need a lot of preparation, and they need a lot of mental time to get into something. And I'd say the common denominator of every actor that I worked with on Southland Tales is they all have like a comedy improv, think on your feet quality where they can just adapt really quickly, and they can come on set and I can just throw them into a situation that's completely bonkers, and they figure it out, and they're not intimidated by it, and they have fun with it. And they don't have all of this baggage or anxiety or neurosis that they're showing up with. They're ready to roll up their sleeves and just kind of go crazy the way some of my favorite, improv people can do. And I constantly, I'm going to comedy clubs and I'm going to improv theater. I'm always moonlighting and showing up at these events in Los Angeles because I love these performers, and anyone who can think on their feet like that, to me, is someone I'm excited to work with at some point. So that was the common denominator with everyone, is none of them were afraid. They were all good, with comedy, even if they hadn't been a cast member on Saturday Night Live, which I think 6 or 7 of my cast in Southland Tales had been cast members on Saturday Night Live. A lot of the other actors had already hosted the show, several times. I felt like everyone stepped up and delivered in an exciting way. And, even just for an example with Justin Timberlake, we only had Justin for one 16-hour day at the Santa Monica Pier. And, and when we put together that, the big musical sequence, which is sort of the heartbeat of the entire film.
Yes, it is.
He lip syncs to the song All These Things That I've Done by the Killers, which at the time was like one of the most popular songs in the world. It was like a huge smash hit song. And we didn't have the rights for it secured yet. And I had this whole vision for Justin doing it. Our choreographer, Marguerite Derricks, who was just the most incredible choreographer, she worked with the dancers. We toured the arcade at the Santa Monica Pier. The dancers rehearsed everything. And then on the day, we had 4 hours with Justin out of the 16-hour day. We had allocated 4 hours to shoot that sequence. And Justin had no rehearsal. There was like no preparation. we told him about the song like 48 hours before he shot it, so he could kind of try and memorize the lyrics and stuff. And we just put him into the scene, and it was 4 Steadicam shots. And he just, I gave him a Budweiser. We had a 6-pack of Budweiser, maybe like a case of it, and even his costume, we just had a white T-shirt, and I'm like, this isn't quite working. So I grabbed a bunch of fake blood from our prop makeup department, and I painted the blood on his shirt, at the last minute. Like, I think the blood was still wet on his shirt when we started shooting. So it was all just like it was just last minute crazy organization. It was as organized as we could do it with the rehearsed dancers, and the Steadicam shots were all blocked out, but Justin just dove into that at the last minute, and he nailed the whole sequence. And then once we shot that sequence, I realized he had to be the narrator because he was breaking the fourth wall and he was looking straight into the lens. So I'm like, by virtue of this fourth wall situation that we're dealing with, he must be the narrator of this film because he will already be breaking the fourth wall as the narrator speaking directly to the audience. So it was sort of like things were being structurally solved and reorganized as I was shooting everything. And so then we brought Justin in to record all the voiceover. We did some live voiceover to get a taste of it. And I have to say, his voiceover in the Cannes version I prefer now because it has a more playful, kind of sarcastic, mischievous tone to it.
Yeah.
And then, so what happened when we went to Cannes, we were so scorned. We were shamed. We were attacked. And we were just like this wounded animal that we were just trying to, get back on our feet. And Sony, had bought the film. They're like, listen, we're going to let you, have a little bit more visual effects money, but you got to cut it down. Richard, you got to cut the length down. And they had suggested, bringing Justin back to re-record some new, we were going to do some new voiceover in places and had to reorganize some scenes and stuff. And so I had Justin re-record the voiceover to sound more like Martin Sheen in Apocalypse Now. That was sort of the new direction that I gave him. And I think it's because we felt like we were so we had been the polarizing response at Cannes made me feel like, were we being too arrogant or too flippant or mischievous in our tone or something? And I felt like, if it's more like Martin Sheen in Apocalypse Now, it'll feel more, the tone will be more of like a World War III wounded soldier, who has PTSD, and it has that kind of tragedy, that stoicism to it. I was just sort of trying to push him in a new direction. So, but I have to say, 15 some odd years later, with Trump being president and just the insanity of the world, I kind of prefer the sarcastic, playful Cannes narration. So
Yeah.
if we're able to do the big 6-hour version, I feel like I would, if I were to get to work with Justin again, I would probably want him to do all the new voiceover for the whole, for the first 3 chapters in that more playful tone, because I just feel like that was what we were setting out to do at the very beginning. And I think he did a great job in both versions, but I just feel like the tone of the original Cannes voiceover is more fitting today, given everything that's transpired in the world, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
There's one line reading in this movie that has always just made me, I remember it. I've remembered it ever since. It's one of the most unforgettable things I've seen in a long time, is when Dwayne Johnson goes up to Bai Ling and she tells him about what would happen if 2 of the same souls on the earth, two same souls would shake hands. and he says, "The world would collapse upon itself, you stupid bitch," and then kisses her. How much of that is scripted, and how much was that just inspired at the time? I've got to know. It's one of those things that it's just, I love it. I laugh every time I see it.
Well, that was actually scripted. I believe it's the fourth dimension will collapse upon itself.
Right.
That was a lot. I have to really hand a lot of that off to Dwayne and to Bai Ling, because they're both great physical performers. They really know how to move their bodies, and they really know they can also just really deliver a line in a really iconic way. And that sort of confrontation between the two of them, where he has her kind of pinned up against the bar and she's sort of blowing cigarette smoke in his face. And it was all very much inspired by film noir from the 1940s and the 50s. And I showed everyone Kiss Me Deadly. We did a special screening of Robert Aldrich's Kiss Me Deadly, the 1955 film noir. We screened it at the New Beverly for the whole cast and crew before we started shooting. And I remember, I had all the hair and makeup people there, and I had Lou Lazara, who's Dwayne's makeup and guy for years, and he did all the prosthetic work for Southland Tales and did Justin's scarring and the old age makeup on Kevin Smith and prosthetics on Amy Poehler and Wood Harris. I mean, everything. So Kiss Me Deadly was like a foundational point. And so Dwayne sort of was emulating Ralph Meeker and Ralph Meeker's performance in Kiss Me Deadly. And part of that was sort of like the machismo and the sort of like rough kind of manhandling kind of machismo, the way he kind of approaches women and Kiss Me Deadly was in that kind of that manner of film noir from that era. And it was sort of meant to play into kind of how would Ralph Meeker deliver that line, and how would he kiss the femme fatale in a film like Kiss Me Deadly. And I think Dwayne and Bai Ling just got really amped up in the scene, and Bai was like, "Richard, I want to fall over. I want to fall and collapse to the ground." She wanted to be so kind of overwhelmed by the moment that she would fall. And so, again, that's where the actors kind of bring a lot of their energy into the equation. And again, that's one of Dwayne's gifts too. One of his many gifts as an actor is when you give him like an iconic line, he really knows how to deliver it in a way, where it's like he's back in the pro wrestling ring and he's got to deliver to the cheap seats at the very high top of the Megadome, wherever he's performing. He knows how to project, but also how to deliver in a really intimate way, and do little tiny intimate like movements with his face and stuff. And so, I was really blessed to get to work with all these actors.
Yeah. Barrett, what was your burning question? I think we're going to have to let him go. Unfortunately, I could probably talk about all these movies for hours and hours and hours, but we don't have that kind of time.
Well, speaking of the Killers, all the things I've done, which you're right, because Hot Fuss was the hot shit at that point. That was the hallmark, and seeing a pop star of the caliber of Justin Timberlake lip sync to it was just so bizarre and delightful for it. But speaking of music, just in general, you mentioned getting the rights to that song. Going back a little bit to Donnie Darko, the songs, not the score. The score is and the music is great, but it doesn't get any more iconic than the Tears for Fears song when they're showing the breadth of the high school, nor the opening song of the Never Tear Us Apart with NXS, and certainly the sequence that Chris was talking to at the end of the movie with Gary Jules covering Tears for Fears' Mad World, which is now kind of in the discussion of Jeff Buckley covering Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, and Jeff Buckley's is the definitive version. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so the thing that you think of with Mad World is the Gary Jules version. How much say, I know you have the final say, but how much influence do you have over your music supervisors on what you say, we've got to go after that and we have to get that song versus, see what you can get and I'll work with what we have. Is this very, very important to you? Is this an important part of the process?
Yes. So my approach with pop songs is I'm really, really aggressive with mapping in at least 2 or 3 like foundational pop songs in the narrative of my movies. Now, not all the movies will have pop songs, or depending on what kind of movie it is that I make. But for definitely my first 2 movies, there were these foundational building block songs that I had written into the script, that I choreographed into the sequence, that were like a fabric of the actual screenplay, And so, in Donnie, it was In Excess, Tears for Fears, and maybe one other. And then I relied upon my music supervisors, Manish Raval and Tom Wolfe, who did both of my first 2 films, who are some of the best guys in the business, to help me flesh out the rest of it, And so they were able to bring in Echo and the Bunnymen, which I was familiar with, but, and then they were able to bring in Joy Division and The Church and, and all these other songs. And so for Donnie, it was this partnership where I gave them, 2 or 3 iconic songs, and they filled everything in with all these suggestions that they were sending me. And they're very intuitive and they know what I'm looking for. And so they've been really essential partners for me in helping me kind of map everything out. And with Mad World, I have to give almost all the credit to Michael Andrews, our composer, who was the score composer for Donnie Darko, and then his friend Gary Jules. So we're recording the score in the Hollywood Hills at Mike's home studio. It's December of 2000. We have been invited into Sundance competition, and we're scrambling, as all filmmakers are, over Christmas time to get their mixes done in time for Sundance, which is just a few short weeks away. And so he's like, Richard, I was thinking for the end of the movie, I can just do a piano melody, or I can bring up my friend Gary Jules. He does this cover of Tears for Fears' Mad World. And so, wait a minute, Mad World, isn't that kind of like a fast-paced song?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah. He's like, I'm going to play you the original, but don't worry. What we're going to do is like a ballad version. So he played the original, and I heard the lyrics, and the lyrics were very poignant, and they spoke to isolation and loneliness and alienation. And then Gary drove up from San Diego. They got in the studio. Gary performed the lyric. It was really beautiful. Mike got on the piano and did the piano. And the whole song, the lyric and the piano were recorded in like an hour.
What?
Yeah. And he put it up against the montage at the end of the movie. And I was like, this is beautiful. Of course. Let's do it. And, of course, we went to Sundance with only festival clearance rights to the songs, which is sort of like a one-time only permission slip from the labels and stuff, because like we were waiting on domestic distribution. So we luckily, once all the distribution finally came to place 5 months later after Sundance, because the movie was not well received, we got to keep about 75% of the music. So we then put Echo and the Bunnymen up front, which works great. And, it's sort of, if in an ideal situation, I would probably use Echo and the Bunnymen twice in the movie. I'd leave it up front. And I'd also, in the director's cut, we have the all night version of The Killing Moon by Echo and the Bunnymen for the party sequence when Jake and Gretchen are coming down the stairs and that big climactic moment. So I'd probably like to use it twice in a if there was ever like a third version of the movie. All this is just, it's like an intuitive feeling, and it's a collaboration, but I definitely have like a strong point of view on at least 2 or 3 songs that I know are going to be foundational. And for Southland Tales, the foundational song was The Killers, All These Things That I've Done. And then I approached Moby early on, before we even started shooting the movie, about doing the score. And he got really excited. He read the script. He gave me a bunch of tracks that ended up being like the Hotel Disc 2 album, which was basically advanced score for Southland Tales that he wrote for Southland Tales. And so I had so much Moby score ready to choreograph to certain scenes in the movie. I believe the other foundational songs for Southland Tales were the Pixies' Wave of Mutilation surf rock version, which I knew was going to be after the shooting of Dion and Dream, when Amy Poehler and Wood Harris are murdered by John Lovitz. And then Muse, Blackout, the song Blackout. After the big Melrose Place scene, which we like to call it, at the Vaughn Smallhouse Mansion, where all the characters are convened for the big dramatic showdown. And then Boxer drives off in the 1951 Jaguar convertible, which is a replica of what Ralph Meeker drove.
Oh, nice. Wow.
So that was Blackout by Muse. And then, so Manish and Tom, our music supervisors, they come to me with all these other wonderful ideas, and whether it's Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, with Howl, with the Mega Zeppelin, and then Blur for the end credits. But then even just little like kind of old pieces like Bertha Tillman, Oh My Angel, and some of like the old kind of music from the 30s and 40s and 50s. That's the sort of the wonderful little flourishes where you like to kind of fill in the sort of canvas of music and everything. So it's a real well choreographed process, but it's not all etched in stone. You've got the 2 or 3 foundational songs, and then you start fleshing everything out, and sort of, it's like a canvas. You have your charcoal outlines that are foundational, and then you start painting in the flourishes at the end and stuff. So it's just it's a real foundational process for me. I'm not one of those people that just slaps all the songs in at the very end of the mix. You know? That's not me. So, but yeah, and you got to really partner with a great music supervisor, because they have a breadth of musical knowledge that I will never have. I only have enough CPU in my brain, and I just can't memorize all the music.
I understand.
I need someone who has that like deep knowledge of like reaching back to like decades into the past and finding an obscure piece of music that just is, really special. So,
well, you perfectly encapsulated late 80s with the soundtrack to Donnie Darko. I mean, that the head over heels, you can't imagine that scene any other way, right? Especially with the techniques that you used with the zoom, the fast forwarding and then the slow motion, and then the fast forwarding and the slow motion, and especially those first keyboard hits as they're getting out of the bus. It just works perfectly, and it's the same thing with all these things I've done with Timberlake. That is hilarious to hear the background of that the shirt may have still been wet, and he's just kind of going on the fly. It's just amazing. You have the ability to create these multi-sensory experiences that really stick with you, all these years later, 15 years later on. And I really appreciate it. I can't wait to see more of the universe of Southland Tales, actually.
Yeah, I've already mapped out some new foundational songs.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't want to say what they are. Again, there's been so much work that's been done on many projects, not just Southland Tales, but and it's a lot of foundation has been laid out. So provided we are getting ourselves out of this nightmare, I'm hoping to be in production on more than one project and be in production for quite a long time. Given that all the writing has been done, like again, there's just been an enormous amount of writing. A long foundation has been laid out for a long time. So as frustrating as it has been, not to be behind the camera, I haven't been idle, and things are in place to hopefully be working at a healthy budget level and deliver all the bells and whistles that people want, and hopefully bring some exciting cinema into the world. So
awesome. I can't wait.
Cannot wait to see it. Whenever you get done with it, it'll be interesting to revisit that world. And maybe one day we'll have a longer amount of time to really go and do a deep dive into your films and everything. But I'd like to thank you so much for coming in and talking with us today.
Yes. Thank you guys. This has been a blast. I appreciate your interest in all of this. And officially, we have, let's count it, 22 and a half hours.
Yeah!
until
you'll hear the collective champagne popping in the next few hours.
Yeah, we'd like to thank Richard Kelly for his time. The special edition Blu-ray of Southland Tales comes out on January 26th. And if you haven't given that movie a chance, do it when it comes out. It's well worth your time. All right, everybody, it's time to talk about BetterHelp once again.
BetterHelp! Let me tell you about BetterHelp, man. This thing has been a godsend for many people, especially in these times. BetterHelp is offered around the world. What you do is you sign up, you answer a few questions, you get matched to a licensed professional counselor, and you're off and running. Everything is within a counseling page, so your scheduling, your communication with your counselor, any kind of documentation that you want to go back and forth, whether it's worksheets, not that they give you homework or anything like that, but things to helpful reminders, things to keep in mind as you go about your therapeutic process. All of that is within your counseling room that you can access with your computer, with your tablet, your phone. It could not be easier. BetterHelp has reached millions of people. They are still hiring counselors because there are so many people signing up, and it's been fantastic for many, 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 many people.
Here's a piece of advice that I wanted to give today, and that's to look at therapy like a maintenance medication, right? So, as an analogy, I have anxiety, so I have a daily medicine that I take. And I'm supposed to take it at the same time every day because it's a slow release. And if I miss one, I don't feel the anxiety right away. It takes a while because it takes a time for it to get out of my bloodstream and system. And so then when I catch back up, it takes a while to get back into my system. So that's why I take it every day at the same time. Now, I'm not saying do therapy every day at the same time, but put yourself on some kind of a schedule, rather than being erratic with when your therapy is. Maybe not the same time every day, but every 2 weeks or every month, or keep yourself on a maintenance schedule so that the benefits of that therapy don't bleed out of your system before you have another session.
Absolutely. And go to BetterHelp.com/Sincast to get 10% off your first month. That month is critical. Use that month wisely. Because that really is kind of the launch point in your therapeutic journey, in your counseling journey. So really make sure you know what you want to work on. Discuss with your counselor to see what you can work on, what they think you need to work on. I know it's been good for me. So if you do feel like you need some help with anger, with depression, with anxiety, with worry, stress, anything related to your mental health, go to BetterHelp.com/Sincast. We love it. We use it. If you feel like you need it, check it out.
All right, well now that interview's over, and I loved every minute of it. We got time for some questions. Let's do some questions.
Question. I got something to say. I want the truth. I am listening.
Yes, indeed. We've got a couple of similar questions to this about crossovers and combining and stuff like that. So here's the first one. What two characters from unrelated movies would you like to see interact? This person has a very nice example of Dirty Harry Callahan, played by Clint Eastwood, obviously, and Paul Kersey, played by Charles Bronson from Death Wish. One would be a vigilante.
Two tough motherfuckers.
Yeah, exactly. That would be a big gun off. What do you guys think?
I mean, if they piss each other off enough, I guess. I mean, maybe they like each other. Maybe they have beers. Maybe the movie's completely different. Maybe that's just like they're going out bowling and drinking beers and stuff, and then shooting people at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if I gave this enough thought, but Sherlock Holmes and Catherine Trammell from Basic Instinct. Because Sherlock Holmes is definitely going to figure out that she's behind everything by the end of this. He is not going to be in bed with her with an ice pick underneath the bed at the end of the movie that Sherlock Holmes is in and everything. So I think Sherlock Holmes would solve it. And the question is, somebody as sexual as Catherine Trammell, would he be able, since he is classically like celibate and in his movies, would he be able to succumb to Catherine Trammell?
You know, I'm not a Sherlock scholar or anything. Does he ever get it on? Like ever? Does he not have a romantic interest whatsoever?
Not from what I've seen. Almost every adaptation I've seen of his of a Sherlock Holmes is he's just always single, doesn't care about relationships. The only thing he cares about is his relationship to Watson. And there's been discussion as to whether, Holmes and Watson may like be gay or, these type of things. But there's a reason why Holmes gets upset that Watson, starts dating or gets married in some versions, is because he's jealous that he won't be around. But it sounds like to me more likely, that my interpretation is he's just upset that he's not around for the friendship and the playing the ideas off of each other's heads. I think that's what he finds more stimulating than any kind of romantic relationship or anything. So it would be interesting to see if this would be something that he would actually go through with and there's actual sex happening, and then he's like, you know what though, this doesn't change the fact that I believe that she did it.
Yeah, there you go. I'm going to sneak in two answers. The first one is I want to see the bullshit off between Matt Damon's character in The Informant and Matt Damon's character in The Talented Mr. Ripley. Because they are both absolute masters of bullshit. One just keeps talking. That's Mark Whitaker. The other one kind of uses costumes and props and accents or voices. I just think that would be fun. But the one I just thought of while you were talking is the dumbest thing I've ever come up with, but I want to watch this movie right now. I want to see a buddy cop, comedy movie with Batman and Vince Vaughn from Swingers, Trent. So they're in the car and Trent's just constantly, how many beautiful babies you bang, Batman? How many? How many? And Batman just has to grumble and deal with it. I think that would be hilarious. Maybe just as an SNL sketch as a whole movie.
And of course, Batman has bedded down many women, and of course, Batman may break and say, my count's pretty high. It's up there. It's intimidating.
My count's pretty high.
Yeah,
because pussy is good.
I can't count.
I can't count. That's funny. I still, every time I watch Talented Mr. Ripley, the circumstances have to be absolutely perfect for him to get away with what he gets away with. You know, like he is a great bullshitter, but like he's so close to getting caught so many fucking times.
You could call it the lucky Mr. Ripley, and you wouldn't be wrong. The true luck, I think the biggest luck stroke in the whole film is that they send a different cop to Rome to interview him because they're mad at the cop who let him get away.
Yeah.
Or not Rome, wherever the fuck. But that's the biggest, because if it's the same inspector who shows up, he's done.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest. I mean, he did do a lot though he did a lot.
Yeah.
He got lucky, but he still did a lot.
Well, I mean, hey, you could say, and I'm going a little off script here, but like you could say the same for Ethan Hunt so many times because like it's always like, well, we'll just have to hope that they haven't met in person. It's like,
like every fucking movie.
Yep. The mask is broken, so we'll just have to make sure that they're not.
Nobody knows.
John Lark, everything's fine.
The reason why things work, though, in Talented Mr. Ripley is that most people are going to sit there and think, no, nobody would go through all this trouble.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And a lot of the times, you know, it's because the truth sounds so fucking out there. People are like, nah, he's probably just, you know, he's just a weird dude or whatever.
And Dickie Greenleaf is not a dude that would get murdered, right? Like that just doesn't make sense, nor would Philip Seymour Hoffman's character. So yeah, they have to kind of invent different, and especially if he's a playboy that just leaves at the flight of ideas, you know, it makes more sense than he got whacked by an oar in his boat.
You know, I'm kind of okay with it. This movie's been running lately on one of these movie channels. I've probably seen this thing or had it on close to 30 or 40 times at this point in my life. And the more I watch it, the more I hate Dickie Greenleaf. And that's just a testament to Jude Law. But he is dirty in so many different ways. When he smacks him with that oar and there's nothing on his face, and then suddenly this red line opens up from where the oar hit him, a tiny little part of me is happy.
Oh, well, of course, because right before then, he's insulting the fuck out of Matt
But
Damon.
he's always viewed him as beneath him. He views everyone as beneath him. I'm not saying I want him to die, but I'm glad he has a little pain there because he had it coming.
even when he's figured it out and he finally brings out the truth, he can't be anything but more dicky about it. No pun intended, but you know, what was the college? You didn't really go to Cambridge
Princeton.
or whatever. Princeton. You didn't really go to Princeton, did you? And he go, and I guess does he admit it? And then he goes, yeah, because Margie and I had a bet, and he just, you know, he's very satisfied with himself that he figured that out, even though it's been fucking months or whatever, you know, however long it's been at this point, you know, he's gotten cool.
I mean, it's just a toy to him. That's what Ripley is. It's just a new toy who comes with some of Dad's money. Anyway, this movie, God, it's quickly climbing up the ranks of my all-time favorites.
It really is. It's beautiful and it's smart and it's great performances. Anyway,
certainly that fucking piano opening is now as iconic in my ear as that first sound of A Few Good Men. Like if I hear that, I'm like, oh, Talented Mr. Ripley's up.
Nice. So to answer the question, it's funny. Out of all the movies in the world, Chris and I chose partially the same one because I'd like to see a movie where Catherine Tramiel, Sharon Stone from Basic Instinct, is interacting / mentoring Sarah Michelle Gellar's character from Cruel Intentions. Because they're both obviously using sex as a manipulation device. And, you know, Catherine Tramiel's probably in her late 20s, early 30s at that point. And she could definitely give some tips to high school aged Sarah Michelle Gellar's character. And they could team up and form a terrifying combo that would lead to a lot of sex and a lot of death, and I would want that.
I do not want to see her character under the tutelage of Catherine Trammell because
she has a bachelor's degree in psychology.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And I would also like to see, the more I think about The Sopranos, the more just, I haven't even watched it over again, but I kind of want to, because James Gandolfini is such a magnetic presence in that. And I would like to see him go up against a real ass contemporary, meaning or somebody at his level, not Uncle June, not his capos and everything, not the law. It'd be awesome to see him have a conversation with the mob boss like Michael Corleone, or even Sonny Black from who really can't get out of his own way, from fucking Donnie Brasco. But like somebody that has the respect and the pull that really he does, you know. Imagine how tense it would be between Al Pacino's Michael Corleone and James Gandolfini's Tony Soprano in establishing territory, in figuring out, you know, a deal of some kind. Because as we all know, Michael is not his father, where he can bring the heads of the 5 families together and negotiate a peace. Michael is, I'm going to get what I want, and whatever you want comes later, and you will owe me something. Yeah. But Tony's also the same way. And so you could see this just absolutely. I would be glued to my TV. I know it's anachronistic, but I would be absolutely glued to it if that happened.
Yeah, almost any time you have a big, huge like gangster from any kind of movie, it would be great to see them square off against anybody from other movies or whatever. Like, who would win that? Who would be the guy who outsmarted or outmuscled the other guy?
Exactly. It's usually good versus evil, right? It's cops and robbers. It's Heat. It's Pacino versus De Niro. Or it's the feds versus Tony, or something like that. It's the enemy of my enemy is my enemy, or the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah,
similar to
famously put by Alien versus Predator.
Exactly, or Dick Tracy and Warren Beatty and Dick Tracy.
That's right. That's right.
You see it when Lorraine Bracco is going through, or when Malfi is going through her thing. And you can see Tony Soprano, as loathsome as he is, could become a hero to her if she would just allow him to step in and do his gangster shit. Yeah. But she doesn't, which is such a great thing. But yeah, so it would be, who would you cheer for in that? I think I'd probably be cheering for Tony Soprano to outsmart Michael, because Michael's just such, we love him, but he's such a fucking dick.
Yeah, I watched that recut of Godfather 3 that came out.
Did you really? What'd you think?
Yeah, I don't remember the original Godfather 3 enough to be like, oh, that's a big improvement or anything. And I still don't really like this one either. There's just too much about it there's just too much about it that I don't like. I don't feel like they set up Sofia Coppola's character enough to where it's devastating that she gets shot and killed at the end of that movie. And even in this one, it just doesn't feel that way. I mean, they spend so much time on her and Andy Garcia and their cousins, and they're like,
they sure are.
And they're like, potentially banging behind the scenes and all this other stuff. They spend so much time on that. And then by the end of it, when, she gets shot, it's just like, it just doesn't feel like you earned it. It doesn't feel, yeah. I mean, maybe she deserved it. No, I'm just kidding.
I wonder how drastically different that movie would be with Winona Ryder in that role. Because Winona Ryder is as wonderful as she is. How are you going to save that role? Honestly,
yeah.
They're still cousins banging.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. It's the story itself it feels a little bit. I mean, he's buying some sort of this big, huge corporation at the beginning of it, and this pisses off a bunch of the families, and it doesn't have that same kind of like layering of motivations and plot and everything that all the other two do. It's just kind of very basic, like, well, he buys this thing and people feel disrespected for some reason, so let's try to shoot him from a helicopter later. And it just
that's the problem, is that he's buying off the debt from the Vatican, and so like all that stuff, the mob being involved with the Vatican, all that is super interesting.
Yeah,
but it becomes just a means to an end. It becomes like the inciting incident, and then they kind of leave all that behind. They touch on it every once in a while, but yeah, you're right. If they had spent more time on that aspect of it, because he's at the Vatican, I think, at the beginning of the movie, like talking to the
it's a great Pope, scene at the beginning. It's a classic way of setting up that whole thing, but I was disappointed.
Next question here: what are two movie universes? Ooh, I went up top there. Universes that could have a crossover because they share an actor playing a similar role. Example, birthday boy from yesterday, as we record this, 90 years young, James Earl Jones in Sneakers and Jack Ryan franchise.
Yeah.
James Earl Jones plays a CIA guy in both. I love
that. We are the United States government. We do not do that sort of thing.
Thanks for stealing the best answer, question asker.
So I picked 1993's Demolition Man.
Ooh.
And 1995's Judge Dredd. And there are two actors that these movies share. So Stallone as a cop, obviously futuristic cop, and they can easily find a way to make. I think after the events of Demolition Man, where they're like, okay, we're done with that oppressive society where we only can play Taco Bell jingles on the radio and shit, and we can finally start fucking again. All that, there's going to be somebody else that comes up probably 4 years later, the New Order or some bullshit, and they're gonna make everything fucked up again. So he has to become Judge Dredd. But Rob Schneider is also in both of those movies.
God damn.
And I think
Schneider.
I think in both cases, Rob Schneider, I don't remember everything about his character, but he's playing Rob Schneider like, characters in both of those movies. So, so those two movies would easily, those two movies would easily kind of, blend into each other at some point. I also think it's possible that Ryan Reynolds playing Van Wilder could end up crossing over into Deadpool at some point.
Of course. Yeah. Talk about a similar character.
Yeah.
What happens at the very end of Demolition Day? Does the Dennis Leary crew come out of the thing and they all kind of enmesh and figure out a new society?
He and Benjamin Bratt, fresh-faced cop, and they all are like, I can change and you can change. We all can change.
Well, and with Benjamin Bratt and Sandra Bullock, you can go into miscongeniality after that.
You can. You can.
I want to see. I think Bull Durham and Tin Cup probably are the same universe, just because they're both Ron Shelton movies. If I wanted to, I could probably make an argument that they're even the same character, that Costner's even playing the same character. A lot of professional athletes, even minor leaguers, are really good golfers. And I could see, now, of course, Tin Cup has a backstory that doesn't include being a minor league baseball player. But the tone of both of those movies is very similar. You've got characters with real heart, but you've still got big belly laughs. So I think that would work. The other one I wrote down was you could do like the Bruce Greenwood is the president trifecta or quadfecta. I just went with National Treasure, Book of Secrets, and Kingman Golden Circle because he's the president in both of those. And so maybe
he's going to be changing from really good to really bad in between.
Yeah, that's right.
When Nicolas Cage is trying to kidnap him, perhaps Eggsy shows up and puts a stop to it. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's believable because he'd be like, you know what? I don't trust anybody anymore. Fuck the world,
It's funny. He's playing the president in 2 shitty sequels in action franchises.
Mm-hmm.
Not the original, just the shitty sequels.
Yep.
The 2 movie universes with the same actors, I would say the first one is Contact and Mission Impossible. Because even though they are, Contact was 97, and what was the last Mission Impossible? Going Rogue Protocol.
Fallout was the last.
Fallout. Yes, and Fallout was 2018, I think. You could see because she's a stern diplomat in both of them. I think she's like a member of the cabinet, at least. Maybe she's the press secretary or something. Did
you say Angela Bassett? Because I'm not sure I even heard Angela Bassett.
Oh, I'm sorry. Angela Bassett is the actor that would be the nexus between these. Because she's a diplomat in both of them. I think she's part of the cabinet in Contact, and she will say something sternly and officially, and then we'll exit for most of the movie, and then we'll come back, say something stern and official, and then leave and come back. She also does make a memorable presence, anything that she does. So in Mission Impossible, if you can get that in the Contact universe, they're in space. And so Ethan Hunt must do the impossible in space. And that motherfucker would go up to actual space and film those stunts.
Mm-hmm. He's doing it for real.
Shit. Mm-hmm. He's doing it for real?
Him and James Cameron, he's going to go to the space station. He's already gotten clearance. I think it's James Cameron. He's going to go to make some kind of space station thriller while he's up there.
Of course.
Hey, can we shoot a movie while we're up here?
Like I'm not
already up here.
Look,
I'm
James
not making
Cameron,
that up.
The reason why James Cameron doesn't make a movie every 3 or 4 years is because he's like, fuck this Earth shit. I'm tired of doing just this basic stuff. Why don't we, like Titanic, he had to go down and like actually do several dives to check out the actual Titanic. And then Avatar, it's like, well, we just don't have the right effects yet. I think he invents a new camera for it or whatever. And then now it's been 12 years since Avatar came out. I mean, the guy is, of course he's like, yeah, let's go to space. That's our next thing.
There you go.
Okay. So look, he apparently there's not a director attached. Cameron asked him about doing it 15, 20 years ago, and he's been thrown into this new story. But Tom Cruise is definitely, I got the head of NASA right here tweeting about it, and Elon Musk and SpaceX and Tom Cruise are all going to make a movie aboard the space station.
There you go, baby. There you go. The other one is Pulp Fiction and Jackie Brown with Samuel L. Jackson as the pivot point.
Nice.
I could see that
nice.
All right, let's do a few more here. We can kind of rapid fire a little bit here.
And by the way, you have a bridge there without a sight with Samuel L. Jackson because he shows up at the very end of that.
That's true.
You have 2 Elmore Leonard adaptations going in there and everything. So.
And right around the same, Jackie Brown was 97 and Out of Sight was 98, right?
Mm-hmm. It would have to be in between because obviously Sammy Jackson dies at the end of Jackie Brown.
He sure does.
Spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's a fun one. Can you Can you recall the first movie where you would watch it just to see a brief glimpse of nudity? This person's was Demolition Man, oddly enough. Where Sly made a video call to the wrong room where a woman with exposed breasts appeared for roughly 2 seconds. At 12 years old, that was as good as it got. This is a kindred spirit back in the days where you could not pull up titties whenever you wanted to online.
I will say that this happened mainly when I started working at movie theaters and I was 16. So there's a sex scene at the beginning of the movie Rising Sun.
Oh, yeah.
On the table, right? That I would go, and find a way to be on break for about 3 minutes so that I could watch that scene.
Here's Chris's 3-minute break coming up.
Yeah. Hey guys, I heard there was a sound issue in this Rising Sun. I need to go in there and make sure because and then Exit to Eden came a little bit later.
Oh.
But it was like me and another manager had it timed out where the movie would start and okay, hour in, you go in and you see Dana Delaney coming out of the pool, and that's all right, that's what we're gonna do. So yeah, those are the couple that I remember doing that with.
You have to keep in mind that I did not have frequent or extended access to movies that had nudity. So most of my early titillation as a young prepubescent boy was like Olympic gymnastics and Sears catalog, JCPenney.
You're like Ben Stiller, and there's something about Mary jerking off to the bra section.
But once I was old enough to have my own video rental card, and, there were plenty of occasions when mom and dad would be out of town or not at home for the evening. And so the real answer here is Terminator, which has a very brief, fleeting scene of nudity.
Of Schwarzenegger when he comes back from time.
Yeah, it's
exactly the scene I was thinking of.
Schwarzenegger scene, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly it. I don't even need to talk anymore. You got it. What's yours?
Yeah,
what is the nudity in Terminator? I forget.
Sarah Connor and Kyle Reese, man.
They have to do it because they have to make John and break the space-time continuum.
Yeah.
Do you think Kyle Reese knows he's making John in that moment?
Ooh, he's like, here comes the Johnny batter.
God damn. Oh no. Wow.
Do you think John sent Kyle Reese back and said, "Be sure you come inside her"?
Don't pull out, man. That's my mom.
That's my mom. You finish in her pussy. God damn it. Finish in my mom's pussy.
All right.
Wow.
I'm out of Kleenex.
Oh Christ. My one of the first exposures to nudity that wasn't my own was Doc Hollywood. Which was
good answer.
One of mine.
Had some boobs in it.
Tommy
Michael J.
Boy.
Fox goes to like a beach, like a lake beach, and sees, who's the actress's name, Chris?
Tommy Boy.
If you hadn't said it, I would have known. Let me look it up real quick. I used to be able to roll this right off my tongue.
And she comes out of the water, and
Julie Warner.
Julie Warner, of course. She comes out of the water, buck naked, and walks up to Michael J. Fox like it's no big deal. She's like, yeah. And then she's like, when she walks away, she's like, "You can blink now."
That's the thing that gets me every time is the "you can blink now." Like, all the nudity's great, but the "you can blink now" is the best part of it.
I also had to admire Daryl Hannah's buttocks in Splash.
Yeah, it's an early one for me too.
She was walking down the beach and showing her naked booty, and it's lovely.
Yeah.
And another thing that you kids don't have to put up with these days you cannot imagine the adolescent algorithm that goes on in the brain of a teenager watching scrambled porn.
Oh, yeah.
Because they sometimes don't scramble it all the way, folks. They sometimes scramble it a little bit, and you can see context clues. It becomes like a gestalt thing where you hear the pounding, and you're like, and then you're looking at the O's, and then you see like maybe a little hair, maybe an arm, and then boom, nipple, and then boom. Usually it's softcore, so you didn't see the whole thing. But later on, if you had a certain kind of cable, you could get the Playboy channel, and you could get a little bit more stuff. And then sometimes they blur super hard, and then sometimes they blur a little bit less. And,
this is how I watched Saturday Night Live when I was a kid, because we didn't have very good reception.
Wow.
So NBC was very snowy.
That was a weird thing, right? Like the channels that were scrambled, like still had a little bit, like they could just a little bit would show up.
Yeah,
like I don't know how that worked.
I became an expert. It was like looking Joe Pantoliano looking at the Matrix and be like, I don't even see numbers anymore. I see a blonde, a brunette, a redhead.
Right.
That was me with scrambled porn. I could look through the screen.
Yeah,
it would become a whole picture.
It's like Elaine with that 3D image, and Mr. Pitt not being able to. Oh, you meant deep focus.
What is your opinion on forced happy endings in movies? Nah, get your minds out of the gutter, people. When you're absolutely positive the movie's going to end up tragic, but then at the last possible second, something ridiculous happens, and now everything's okay. I find these endings annoying because there's no reason to just switch it around at the last minute. God bless you, questioner, because I feel the exact same thing. Pick your lane and drive in it. What do you guys think?
I've got two robot movies here.
Oh,
ooh!
One of them is Terminator 2. And this, I mean, I guess this has to happen, but there's a point where the T-1000 drives a fucking metal rod all the way through the Schwarzenegger, and he is beat up all to fuck. Like all the things that in his internal, everything is damaged. And then they finally shoot that thing through him, and there's electricity, and he's dead. But let's wait for about 10 minutes or so, and there's a backup power that comes on all of a sudden that could have come on, 3 minutes earlier if it really wanted to.
Yeah.
But in this case, it was, it's doing some sort of doot, doot, doot. You see the screen on there, and there's like little dots, and it's like, it's like backup power restored and whatever. And he gets back up, and he's just as strong as he was before, even though he was beat all to fuck.
Yeah.
And of course he finds a way to win by the end of that. The Iron Giant also has this moment where he is blown up at the end. He has made this wonderful sacrifice, and that's where the movie I think possibly could have ended. We are sad that he can no longer be with us, and that's life. But at the very end, even though it's very touching and it'll make your hair stand on end and everything, the pieces of Iron Giant somehow are all across the world calling back to each other, even though he's been blown up to fuck. I mean, what is he made out of Legos that don't burn? What is the deal? Like, there's got to be burned and charred and like unrecoverable things from that blast.
Yeah.
But in this one, they're making it seem like, oh no, he was just blown to a bunch of pieces that they can all call each other later by the end, because we don't want the kids to get too distressed at the end. We want to make sure that he's going to be alive by the end of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I interpreted this question two different ways, because I think it's a complex question, because there are forced happy endings, and then there are movies that you thought were going to end tragically, but then at the last minute something turns it around. It's not always happy. So I've got an example for both. So the forced happy endings I already talked about before. The Happiest Season, the Kristen Stewart.
Oh yeah.
Mackenzie Davis romance, where in roughly 24 hours, Mackenzie Davis goes from adamantly not coming out to coming out, and her parents, who have been presented all along as not accepting, are immediately loving and accepting. And there's actually this whole movement of fans of this movie who think Kristen Stewart should have ended up with Aubrey Plaza's character.
Yeah.
And I think you could make a case for that. It's certainly an unneeded happy ending for a movie. I guess romantic comedies, by definition, feel like they have to have a happy ending, even though they shouldn't. But then I also wanted to bring up, I've been trying to talk about this movie for about 2 weeks since I saw it again, 1 Hour Photo with Robin Williams.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a movie that should have a violent ending. Because he goes from a guy who's kind of just enamored with this family, Michael Vartan and is it Connie Nielsen? I think it's Connie Nielsen.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think it's Connie Nielsen. Anyway, he's the photo guy, the photo guy. He makes their photos at a Walmart-like store. And he slowly, over days or weeks, becomes obsessed with them. And then, like, he fantasizes about sneaking into their house. He goes to the kid's soccer game when the parents aren't there and gives the kid a toy. It's creepy shit. But then, in going through photos that he's developing for another person, he finds out the husband is having an affair with this woman. And it makes him angry that this husband would throw away this perfect family. So he follows them, stalks them to the hotel, is fairly clever in figuring out what room they're in, and goes up there. He cancels a room service order that they ordered and then takes up fake room service himself and goes into the hotel room they're screwing in with a knife, and they're naked. And he starts making them pose. And listen, I'm talking about a movie, not real life, but this movie needs to have a violent ending. Instead, it cuts away and nobody really got hurt, and now he's going to jail, and he was just a troubled man. And the end. Nobody gets stabbed multiple times. Nothing like that. And the whole movie has been leading up to something much more visceral, and it completely pulls its punch. I have a feeling someone on the Robin Williams PR team didn't want him doing a slash murder at the end of this movie, even though if they had that feeling, they should have never let him take the role.
Right?
Because everything about the role is nearly that bad.
I think it was the same year he did Insomnia as well, and it may have been maybe just a little bit too much for him to be those two kind of characters in the same year or something.
Maybe.
Who knows? That's
crazy because I've only seen that once. I remembered enjoying it, but I would have told you that he did kill them at the end.
Yeah,
I completely forgot that end.
Yeah, it's a pleasant enough watch. I mean, he's engaging and carries the film, but somebody somewhere read a screening review comment card and completely changed what the ending should have been. So,
well, and I think, I should know this because we've talked about it enough, but I think maybe the same thing would have happened with Jordan Peele's Get Out, because I think he filmed an alternate ending. What you see at the end of that movie, which I saw originally in the theater, and I was expecting, is that Daniel Kaluuya's character has now wiped the entire family, the evil family, off the earth, including burning down the house inadvertently. So he really doesn't have any evidence, especially since Allison Williams' character is right down the road, all shot up. And so you see the police car coming up, and I guess, I don't know if everybody felt this way, but you're conditioned at this point, or I was, to think, shit. You're conditioned to say, oh, the cops are here, and then, oh, shit, the cops are here. And then you're like, well, this isn't going to end well for him, given the entire ethos of the movie. But the theatrical cut ends with Lil Rel Howery coming out and from his TSA position and saying, I'll rescue you. And it's not a bad ending. It's not a bad ending at all. But I think movie-wise, whether it was Jordan Peele's intention or not, I think movie-wise it pulled its punch at the end of that.
Have I discussed the alternate ending to Get Out on the
I think you have, yeah,
because
where it is. Yeah. It's on the Blu-ray, right?
Yeah, it's on the Blu-ray. It's great. If it had ended that way, it would have been great as well. I think it's a better and more honest ending. But Jordan Peele wanted to change it because he felt like with Donald Trump going into office, he felt like the character needed a win at the end of it.
Well, I understand that, and I'm happy to see that character survive at the end. But within the movie's logic, that would be just a brilliant ending to cap off how honest that movie is. And the other one is Motherfucking Beauty and the Motherfucking Beast. Which is the official title of this movie. Ends in such a bullshit manner, man. Okay. So Belle goes back to the castle, and Beast is all depressed, and she runs back to say to warn him that the mob is coming. But then Gaston stabs him, and motherfucker dies, right? And at this point, Belle's going back just to warn him, not to tell him that she loves him, right? But she gets there, and homeboy dies, petal falls off, last petal of the rose falls off, hits the ground. Spell is irreversible at this point. Irreversible. But she says, I love you, and all of a sudden he's swept up and then turned into the prince. And it's such bullshit, man, because, yeah, she felt like that she hadn't felt before in the middle of the movie and everything, but he's still fucking Beast. She doesn't know he's a prince. She's going to warn him. Like, at best, they're friends. They're friends, okay? And at worst, petal fell off the rose. Curse is irreversible. He stays a beast. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense, and I hate it.
I don't know what it was, but when Jeremy was describing what he thought this question meant, I thought of Rushmore, because Rushmore has just a somewhat out of nowhere happy ending as well. Yeah. Because considering what Jason Schwartzman's been doing the whole movie, and he never learns any lessons, suddenly he learns the lesson so that the movie can have the happy ending by the end of it. And like, he's okay with, Olivia Williams going out with Bill Murray again. And he's sort of like, all right, I really do have a girlfriend my age, someone who likes me. I'll go out with her. That's probably best for me. He seems to be okay with what his dad does, because he's been saying he's like a brain surgeon the whole movie, but then he's like, oh, he's a barber by the end of it. Like, all the things that he was having a hang up about, he decides, fuck it, third act, we're not going to worry about that.
Yep.
All right. That's going to do it for this episode. Once again, would like to thank Richard Kelly for being on this episode. That the interview was great. I really enjoyed talking to him. If you want to comment on this episode, go to Sincast presented by Cinemasins on Facebook. We're also on Cinemasins Twitter, Music Video Sins Twitter. We're on SoundCloud and Discord. If you want to get on Discord, you can go to our Reddit page and find a link on the right side there, or you can go to Facebook and private message me, and I can give you a link there. But that's going to do it for this episode. It's Chris Atkins and Jeremy Scott and Barrett Scher. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Comment on our episodes on our SoundCloud page. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. And be sure to visit cinemasins.com.
Okay. It's like every day now, it seems like you're like, why is this blurry?
Why is Jesus blurry?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not aware of too many things. I know what
Edie Brickell and the New Radicals.
Do ya? Yeah.
New
Edie Brickell and the
New Bohemians.
New Bohemians. I was thinking about the New Radicals doing their.
You gotta get what you get.
Is a walk on slippery rocks with a chin. And then later,
by the way,
it's doggone cereal box with a chin.
I love that that song, by the way. And she was married, or at least dating, Paul Simon for a long time. Edie
For
Patel.
sure, I think they married for a bit.
So New Radicals with the "You Get What You Give," a song that I loathe with every amount of sperm in my sack.
You're wrong.
Is they're reuniting for the Biden inauguration.
Yep.
Because they said now is the time to bring the New Radicals back into the fold.
Are they still going with the new in front of their?
Yeah, I mean they're old. Well, wasn't he bald? He was bald back in those days, but I think he shaved his head. He's probably just
You're bald.
You're bald. Not. I was bald. So you guys like that song? You like that?
I love that song.
I like it.
Oh,
I have it on my phone. I love it so much.
You got the dreamer in you.
Oh God!
Don't let go.
I can't. I actually don't understand why you don't like this song. This seems like a Barrett song.
I think there's like one lyric he hates, right?
Well, yeah, the stupid Courtney Love and Marilyn Manson lyric is stupid.
Beck and Hansen.
The whole, yeah, Beck and Hansen. Yeah, not Beck Hansen, Beck and Hansen. I have a feeling he wrote that lyric, like, he got halfway through it and he was like, you know what? Let's just throw the actual group Hansen in here instead of Beck. No, I've always said the guy seemed like a smarmy motherfucker, and it just it's fingernails on a chalkboard.
Yikes.
It was on, obviously, and I was like sitting there like I didn't hear anything that was being said during it or anything. I was just seeing that he was up there, but it was just funny that George W. Bush afterwards was like, that was some weird shit.
My favorite part is the random thing where The Rock is talking to Sean William Scott, and he's like, so we're fucking last night, right? He's talking about Sarah Miguel, and he's like, we're fucking, and just as I'm about to come, I puke on her tits.
Yeah. Nobody rocks the cock
it
like
happens.
There's some the line readings in this are so great. Like, everybody get to the rear of the mega zeppel.
Jeremy, did you ever see Under the Silver Lake?
No, but I saw Inherent Vice, and if those are similar, then I made a good choice.
I'm the only one in the universe that likes that. Well, Chris, no, you don't even like it.
I know. I remember the Maltons really didn't like it.
Nobody likes that movie.
It's a free movie on Amazon, though, right?
Inherent Vice?
No.
Under the Silver Lake.
Is that the movie you're talking about? Is Inherent Vice? I thought you were talking about Under the Silver Lake.
No, I went back to Under the Silver Lake. The Maltons didn't like that.
Yes, Under the Silver Lake is available on Amazon. In fact, it was an Amazon production, I believe.
The only reason I haven't watched it yet is that every time I'm like, oh, that would be cool to watch. I go and check it out. I was like, go find it, and it's like 2.5 fucking hours or something. And I'm
it is.
That email gave me a boner.
I've got a boner.
I just want you to know at some point today, I'm going to tell you how wrong you are about We Bought a Zoo. But that'll wait.
Dude, that movie's a little delightful.
It's not without charm. It's not without charm. But
no, it's not great, obviously.
It loses points for having the hottest woman in the world be the main soup worker.
She's got a crush on Matt Damon and wants to kiss him.
Yeah.
Dude, it's adorable, though.
Well, just don't
it's
take
such
that
a
thinking.
weird movie. Freaky is maybe my favorite movie of the last year.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, it's absurdly violent.
It's so fun.
But Christopher Landon of Happy Death Day did it, so it's got that kind of fun to it. But Nomadland is great. I was sitting there watching it, going, "Yeah, this is good," and it's probably even better than I'm giving it credit for. I mean, but it's just, man, I just didn't want to see anything like that.
I felt the exact same way, man.
Mm-hmm. And it was
it's
like,
great.
oh, yeah,
It's
like,
great.
oh, this is so good. But like at the same time, I was like, this is not
I bet
scratching my itch, man.
I bet Jeremy would love it because of the scenery, though.
Yeah,
because it's in the Badlands and all that stuff.
I'm really into slow ass movies the older I get. I don't know why.
Well, this is perfect for you then.
Put on something like, I'm just going to leave this right here. And I'm like, okay, now we know that this is going to be intellectually dishonest.
Obviously The Rock wasn't who The Rock is now. Sarah Michelle Gellar was still kind of riding high.
Sarah Michelle Gellar is fucking hilarious.
It is so good. That teen horniness is not a crime thing. I could have talked to him for an hour about that song.
It's not a crime, and they have this. They have like it actually plays the song for a bit, and you can hear some of the lyrics, and they are fucked up. And then like, but yeah, there's a point where they're that Nora Dunn is trying to blackmail the senator, and Holmes Osborne plays the senator in that. And he's looking at the CD, and he's like, "Teen horniness is not a crime." I never said it wasn't. That whole Jim Cunningham thing. I love the whole thing where like Maggie Gyllenhaal is watching the screen, watching the news, and they're like, and they found a kiddie porn dungeon in his basement or whatever. And she goes, "Oh my God." And then there's that, like the next scene, like, that and Beth Grant is like sitting there like doing this because the sparkle motion is going to Star Search, and then somebody shows her the newspaper with Jim Cunningham's been busted on it and everything, and she's like, oh,
oh yeah. I'm starting to doubt your commitment to sparkle motion.
I made Samantha lead dancer.